Hello, BookTube. It's Monday, and I'm back with essays. This is day 9, and it's an essay concerning correspondence. I do apologize, there's the light here, so I've got a bit of a halo. But it's the only way that I'm going to be able to read properly, because even though it always looks so bright in the video, but it's not that bright in this corner unless I have this light on me here. But Evie Lucas, getting back to the essays, Edward Verrill Lucas was born in 1868 and died in 1938. His first job was apprentice to a bookseller. He became a journalist, and he started writing and never stopped. And I joked many times that he never slept, he never ate, because he wrote or somehow managed to fit in 48 hours or more in every 24. And it seems like that for the amount that he's written. Just essays, fiction, biography. He edited the letters and wrote a biography of Charles Lamb. And it's been noted by him that he spoke less words than he actually wrote. But let's get to the essay concerning correspondence. Now, this one might take a little longer because he quotes actual letters and quite a bit of stuff, so I'm going to try to paraphrase as much as possible, but it might go over a little bit. But I'll do the usual and read the first paragraph or thereabouts. Concerning correspondence. Now that 4 ounces of letter go for a penny, the complexities of life are almost over. In the old days, in the absence of a letter balance, to decide upon the weight of an envelope was a matter involving the judgment of the whole household. One method of computing it was to hold the envelope in one hand and an ounce of tobacco in the other, but that was not impeccable. Another was to employ the kitchen scales, which unhappily are often superior to mere accuracy, or they decline to be put in motion by anything less than a quarter of a pound. Today, when a quarter of a pound is the standard, all such anxiety is past. Still, it is distressing to think how few people keep letter scales. There positively are houses which possess 3 bicycles and a typewriter but no letter scales. On the other hand, there are also houses where every postal requisite is prominent. Every postal requisite means a little leather box from Bond Street with stamps in gold on the lid. The word stamps in gold on the lid. And 2 cedar wood compartments within, for penny and halfpenny stamps, a stick of sealing wax and a seal, a leather box of string, also from Bond Street, armed with a tiny pair of scissors so small that no normal fingers can hold them, a postal guide, letter scales, a wet pad for stamping, for stamp moistening, which is almost always overlooked until the tongue has done its work, and a photograph of Mr. Heinecker Heaton. And he ends saying, in such houses it is very hard to write letters. Then he goes on to say that Lewis Carroll of Alice in Wonderland fame wrote a pamphlet containing 8 or 9 wise words about letter writing. That was the title of it. And he names a few here, he quotes a few, and quotes, if a letter is to be in answer to another, begin by getting out the other letter and reading it through. In order to refresh your memory as to what it is you have to answer, and as to your correspondent's present address. Next, address and stamp the envelope. What? Before writing the letter? Most certainly. And I'll tell you why. What will happen if you don't? You will go on writing till the last moment, and just in the middle of the last sentence you will become aware that time's up. And he says, the methodical, of course, have no need of such hints, but as most of us are otherwise, a few more rules may be quoted. And to quote Lewis Carroll again, "Don't fill more than a page and a half with apologies for not having written sooner. Write legibly. Don't repeat yourself. When your letter is finished, read it carefully through and put any not, the word not, that you may chance to have omitted. This precaution will sometimes save you from saying what you had not quite intended. For example, suppose you had meant to write, 'Dear Sir, I am not prepared to accept your offer you make me of your hand and heart.' When you say in your letter, 'I enclose £5 blank banknote,' or 'I enclose John's letter for you to see,' get the document referred to and put it into the envelope. Otherwise, you are pretty certain to find it lying about after the post has gone." And again, he continues with Lewis Carroll. If it should ever occur to you to write jestingly in dispraise of your friend, be sure you exaggerate enough to make the jesting obvious. A word spoken in jest but taken as earnest may lead to various serious consequences. I have known it to lead to the breaking off of friendship. Suppose, for instance, you wish to remind your friend of a sovereign you have lent him, which he was forgotten to pay. You might quite mean the words, "I mention it as you seem to have conveniently bad memory for debts and jest, yet there would be nothing to wonder at if he took offense at that way of putting it. But suppose you wrote, "Long observation of your career as a pickpocket has convinced me that my only hope for recovering the sovereign I lent you is to say, 'Pay up or I'll summons you.'" He would indeed be a matter-of-fact friend if he took that as seriously meant. And he notes that in this pamphlet that Lewis Carroll wrote, he did not offer a sample, a specimen of a letter. And he goes on to say that there are many publications of which do this and tell you how to write a letter. And he refers to one from 1618, the production under the versatile Gervais Markham, or of another man with the same initials. His title is "Conceited Letters Newly Laid Open, or a Most Excellent Bundle of New Wit, wherein knit up together all the perfections or art of epistling, by which the most ignorant may with such modesty take and argue with the best learned, a work varying from the nature of formal precedents." And he says it's a slender volume, a black letter volume. It contains a number of letters couched in a style which is perhaps well to have superseded. And he goes on and he gives some examples, and it's a letter to a friend for his opinion in divers points of considerations. And he does write the word divers, which is an old archaic word meaning sort of varying or diverse, I suppose. And I'll just read a little bit of it because it's quite funny. It's funny to us because of the style. "My honest Ned, I pray thee write me word by this bearer, how thou doest thy opinion of the world, of life and death, honesty and wit, and what comes into thy head when thou hast leisure to be idle. I long to hear from thee, to read thy conceits, which, if they be of the old fashion, are better than the new form. Be what will be, to me it shall be welcome and thy safe better whensoever I may see thee." So it just goes on like that. It's just basically requesting, how do you deal with things like when you're idle? Well, how do you get by things? What do you think of? And just that kind of questions, and he answers that basically that now for some notes I have taken of the world and divers things in it. Let me tell thee that of all the wealth of the world there in one chest it would not buy 1 hour of life. If all the honesty of the world were in one heart, it would not buy 1 bit of bread. And if all the wit in the world were in one wicked pate, it would not buy 1 jot of grace. And therefore it is meet with death at meaner price, and to carry money with honesty, the better to go to market and to join grace with wit. Yeah, he just goes on and says, well, yeah, it's you can't be happy with money. Okay, but he takes a few sentences to say that. And Evie Lucas, after quoting these 2 letters at length, it says, it is comfortable to think that people no longer write letters like that. When it comes to practical counsel, the best stanza of the following poem by Mrs. Elizabeth Turner, an ancient preceptor of the young, offers the best instruction in correspondence that can be given. And it says, Maria intended a letter to write, but could not begin as she thought to indite. So wit to her mother with pencil and slate, containing dear sister and also a date. With nothing to say, my dear girl, do you think of wasting your time over paper and ink? But certainly this is an excellent way to try with your slate to find something to say. I will give you a rule, said the mother, my dear. Just think of a moment your sister is here. And what would you tell her, consider, and then, though silent your tongue, you can speak with your pen. And then Lucas repeats again, speak with your pen. That is what the best letter writers do, whether they are literary artists such as Lamb and Horace Walpole Cowper, Cooper, actually, the pronunciation I found out recently, the poet, Cowper, but it's pronounced Cooper, apparently, and Keats, Edward Fitzgerald, and Shirley Brooks, or the unknown pen gossipers whose letters are flying hither and thither at this very moment, linking household to household and heart to heart. My own theory is that as good letters have been and are being written by obscure people as that find their way into volumes, in many respects better, since there can be no taint of self-consciousness in their composition, no hint of posing, no thought of posterity, no attempt to do more than interest or amuse. Talking on paper, that is letter writing, he says, and it is because plain talk is very often better than brilliant talk, that education is of little service to correspondence, and the best writers of books are by no means the best writers of letters. And yes, I agree with that very much so, after reading a lot of letters over many years. Anyway, many persons who spell phonetically on rules not of Pitman's but of nature's framing are better correspondents than the universities can produce. In some of the best letters I have seen, H-A-S, was always spelled as A-S. And there are many small capital I's, but how interesting and communicative and shrewd they are. It is indeed time that a stand was made against the pedantic and prosaic tyranny of orthography. Take, for example, the following scrap of a letter from a gardener to his employer, where the gardener, a man of education, how much less picturesque would his message be? The greenhouse would then have possessed no sex and no individuality. As it is, the greenhouse is a delightful monster. And he says, the letter quote says, Sir Guy Edwardson, Bart, I'm very sorry to tell you that I can't do everything with the green. and in square brackets greenhouse. I think he will kill every plant I have. Sometimes he will get very hot, and another time I can't get any heat in him, and we can't stop him from smoking. So I don't know what I can do with him. And I'll go through some of the spellings of these words, because I've tried to say what I think he means. And I cannot do anything. ENAYTHING. And very, VARRY, very hot. Another time I can't get any ENEY, heat in him. We can't stop, I think it is, STAPE, from smoking. And I don't, DOUNT, know what I can do with him. And he goes on again, and he quotes at length several other letters with spellings like that you just... It's clear that you can understand what is being said. It just takes a few moments to sort of get used to it. And yeah, he just... it says the letters does not possess what Matthew Honor called a serviceable prose style. It should be puzzling to say who does. And he talks about these letters like that have the spelling the differences, and they do have a very particular style. And he goes on to quotes a few more letters. He talks about a postcard being lost, and that was posted or put on. Let's see, was it in the magazine of the General Post Office? Yeah, it was put here. It says, "I have received a hamper, but no trotters. The tripe is no good without the trotters. You have had the money, and I want my stuff, and I want the trotters. My money is good as your stuff." And he says, in spite of entertaining arrays of primitive phonetics, a prejudice in favor of correct spelling is, one fears, certain to linger. Printers, readers, parents, and schoolmasters play too important a part in the control of the world. As an instance of how deep-rooted this prejudice is, I might mention that in a recent work on rowing, Mr. R.C. Lehman himself, an athlete and humorist who ought to know better, urges correct spelling even upon oarsmen. Oarsmen, he says. And yeah, he quotes a couple letters here that are just sort of perfect English and perfect spelling. And he says, if men who can manage an outrigger are not to be permitted to spell as they like, it is time we cease to call England a free country. And he goes on, like sometimes writing in a third person, but it takes a genius to really write in the third person properly. But then he talks about experience teaches that it is best to adhere to the first person singular, even at the cost of appearing too familiar. By the way, among first-person singular correspondence, there is nothing to excel the consciousness, force, and directness of the following notes, which one passed between Mrs. Foote, the mother of the comedian, and Foote himself. Mrs. Foote wrote, "Dear Sam, I am in prison for debt. Come and assist your loving mother." Sam's reply is, "Dear mother, so am I," which prevents his duty being paid to his loving mother by her affectionate son. And then he goes on and says he presumes millionaires corresponds entirely by telegram. An objection to such a practice, apart from the detail of expense, is that in time one must come to talk like Alfred Jingle. Anyway, I'll get to a few comments if I have time. The antithesis of the telegram is the postcard, which has a little connection with true epistolary art. The fact that ingenious persons can crowd some hundreds of words upon it is nothing to do that is in favor. To crowd words is indeed fault in correspondence. To underline womanly accomplishment is undesirable, and to cross is wicked. Remember, says Lewis Carroll, the old proverb, cross-writing makes cross-reading. avoids slyly the old proverb. You say, inquiring, how old? Well, not so very ancient, I must confess. In fact, I'm afraid I invented it while writing this paragraph. Another bad habit is eccentric pagination, especially when indicative numbers of which it may be followed are omitted. Yet considering what a blessed thing the letter can be, and by letters I mean friendly, intimate pen chat, any method, however odd, is permissible. Communicativeness is the grand test. It's I find it very, very interesting because he talks about the spelling and stuff. And today with emails, like everybody's writing quick, typing quickly, and like I miss knots, and I miss words as well. And if you don't proofread it, you can easily change it. But then with a letter, it's a little different. But even with the spelling, like, you make typos while you're typing. And most of the time people understand what it is, and it's only pedantic people that really go crazy over the spelling that's not correct. But also I found funny with his telegram, because I always thought telegrams were tantamount in some ways to Twitter. Where you've got only a certain length of time to do something, and then he says you make it sound like a jingle. So, like, as if all people do is communicate in Twitter. They have expanded the characters, but before it was like to do it in very short spurts, and then just wondering if people who did that all the time would start to talk like that in their normal speech. But no, yeah, I didn't think this, like, when I first started reading this several days ago. I only got a little ways into it, but I was really tired, and I thought, oh, he's just, like, there's some pedantic letters in here, and but now I really, really get to see what he was aiming at, and it's a brilliant essay. It's really, really good. It's one of my favorites so far from here. But anyway, that was day 9 of essays. The next one essay is concerning animals. And I do hope to be able to do that tomorrow. I do apologize for this being a bit longer, but I think it warranted it by reading some of the letters Lucas quotes. I will see you later, BookTube.